Hello and welcome along to today's Flying Adventures Flight Simulator X. Still a few weeks away from the new Microsoft Flight Simulator coming out. So for the time being, we're sticking with the old classic that we all know and love. And today it's an A380 EasyJet, A380, A320 even, EasyJet A320. And we're flying from my home field of Birmingham to Belfast and then back again. Very quick flight. You can normally get it done and dusted in under an hour each way. Pretty much by the time you reach cruise, it's time to start descending again. Today's flight will take us out over over Wallasey, so up sort of Liverpool will be to our right, North Wales will be to our left. We'll then fly across the North Welsh coastline, up to Anglesey, across the Irish Sea towards Belfast. So we'll have a look around once we get airborne, but what we'll do is we'll get the plane set up, get the route set up, and then we'll get underway. Okay, so we'll start preparing the aircraft for departure. Then first thing we'll do is we'll request the IFR clearance.
Clearance delivery, 451, this type Airbus A320, IFR, Aldergrove, ready to copy. 451 is cleared to Aldergrove Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain, altitude 12,000. Departure frequency is 118.05, squawk 3772. 451, cleared to Aldergrove Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain, altitude 12,000. Departure on 118.05, squawk 3772. 451 correct. Contact ground on 121.8.
So we're clear to an altitude of 12,000 feet on departure, which means we'll get across the 10,000 feet limit. Under 10,000 feet we can only do 250 knots. Above 10,000 feet we can speed up to cruise speed, so 320, 325 knots. We're going to cruise on this flight at around 27,000 feet, and we should get to about Mach 0.78, maybe Mach 0.80 depending on the wind conditions. We're using real world weather for this flight, which is already loaded into the system. Today in Birmingham it is in fact a very clear, very hot, very sunny day, and those conditions will be the same when we reach Belfast as well. So we'll set the speed settings into the autopilot at 250 for the initial departure. The altitude is set now for 12,000 feet. Vertical speed initially for the climb out 2,300 feet, but obviously we will reduce that once we begin to climb in earnest up to cruising altitude. We won't be able to maintain 2,300 feet in the climb and also accelerate away, so it's just to get us that initial altitude and climb out from the airfield. We'll probably be climbing once we're passing through 10,000 feet. We'll reduce the climb to probably around 1,600 feet a minute. It's a bit more comfortable for the passengers in a real world setting as well. As you can see, there's a slight bug with this aircraft in FSX in that the automated ground vehicles don't quite know where it is, and so you end up with a situation like that with the baggage loading, where it's basically sat in the middle of the aircraft. But once those disappear, then we'll be ready to get underway, close up the doors and get underway. In fact, what we'll do is we'll close the main doors at this point. And just to wait for the baggage loaders to disappear. With this Birmingham airport scenery, by the way, we don't tend to park down this end of the airfield that often. This is in fact where EasyJet do park in real life. But you can see just in the distance there the rail link to the NEC and Birmingham International Rail Station. It's sort of a cable car device, a Doppelmayr cable car device. Used to be a maglev back in the late 80s, early 90s, but now replaced by a cable car system which runs between the airport and the NEC and the railway station. You can see it in the distance there coming along. This is the only scenery set that I'm aware of that actually has this animated in FSX. And like I say, because we normally park further around at the terminal buildings, very rarely get to see this view of the airport. Obviously other buildings are modelled as well. Here, that's the Novotel, the sort of black, dark grey building in front of us. That's Novotel. That's been part of the airport site since the main terminal was first opened in the 80s, early 80s. And as you can see, the new international pier there as well. There's an Emirates 777 pushing back.
Birmingham, ground Emirates 40 Heavy with information Foxtrot, request taxi IFR. Emirates 40 Heavy, taxi calling point for runway 15. See taxi register Delta Alpha. Contact tower 118.3 when ready.
Obviously this scenery was designed before Monarch went bust, hence why there are Monarch aircraft here. Also further around on the airfield there are a lot of Flybe aircraft. They only went bust a couple of months ago, and obviously the scenery hasn't been updated to reflect that. Those poetic licenses aside, the baggage truck is disappearing now, and so we'll be able to close the main hold and get underway ourselves, no doubt following that Emirates 777 up to the end of runway 15. a 1-5 departure will give us a southerly departure, which means we're going to have to make several turns almost immediately on departure to get back on track to head in a north-westerly direction for Belfast. Okay, so the baggage truck has gone. We have closed up the baggage holds. The doors are closed. We can request taxi and push back from the gate and get underway.
Birmingham ground 451 with information hotel. Request taxi IFR. 451. Taxi holding point 3 runway 15. Via taxiway Victor Delta Alpha. Contact tower 118.3. Ready. Taxi holding point for runway 15 via taxiway Victor Delta Alpha 451.
Okay, so that's taxi clearance sorted. We'll just have a look around the aircraft just to make sure there is nothing in our way before we push back. And we're looking pretty clear. Yeah, there's nothing on the move around us, so we will get underway. And obviously as we push back we will start the engines as well.
Line 1, hold position, caution other traffic. 451, continue taxi. Roger, 451.
Okay, so we're pushed back from the gate now. We've got our engines running, so we'll just check our flight control surfaces before we commence the taxi down to the runway. Just check the rudder input, elevator, and we've got full movement, no issues. So we're good to go with our taxi down to runway 15. We'll also select our takeoff flaps as well whilst we're on our way down. You can see in the distance there the Emirates 777 has lined up on the runway, so will come speeding past us in a moment. And Birmingham Airport's fire station is on the right hand side. The Emirates still holding at the end of the runway at the moment. I would have thought he'd have been rolling at that point, but it's still there. And he's rolling now. So looking out in the distance, there doesn't appear to be anything else on approach, so I would think we're going to be cleared to depart pretty much immediately here.
Overshoot 118.05, Emirates 40 baby, bye-bye. Birmingham Tower, 451, ready for IFR departure, runway 15451, cleared for takeoff, runway 15, service wind 233 at 7.
As I thought, we were cleared immediately for departure there.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 15451.
And the wind's not that bad either, so we shouldn't have much of an issue in low level turbulence on departure, so couldn't really ask for better flying conditions. Okay, so we're lined up, no need to hang around. All the flight surfaces are set, systems are all set, autopilot's all set, routing is all set. Let's go. V1, rotate, V2, positive rate, gear up, as you can see from the wing view passing out, you can see the terminal buildings and all the other aircraft on the ground below us.
118.05, Birmingham departure 451 is climbing through 1,400 for altitude 12,000. 451 Birmingham departure, roger, UNH 1018. 451, turn right heading 320, resume on navigation, climb and maintain, altitude 12,000. Turn right heading 320, resume on navigation, climb altitude 12,000. 451.
And so we'll make our turn now pretty swiftly round to intercept our flight routing. As I said before,
Contact country approach on 211.9.25. Over 211.9.25, 4515.
To intercept our route to take us out over Wallasey, and on our way over the Irish Sea then towards Belfast.
Birmingham departure 451 is climbing through 4,100 for altitude 12,000. 451 Birmingham departure, roger, UNH 1018. 451, turn right heading 350. Turn right heading 350, 451.
So that's a zoomed in view from what you would see from Birmingham Airport itself, from the tower. That's the tower view.
Contact overhead. 123.0. Over 123.04515.
So we've just been handed over to Wolverhampton approach.
Wolverhampton approach 451 is climbing through 7,800 for altitude 12,000. Wolverhampton approach, roger, UNH 1018.
And now a handover to Manchester Control, which should see us well over the Irish Sea to Belfast.
Over 211.8.7754515. Manchester Control 451 is climbing through 9,800 for altitude 12,000. 451 Manchester Control, roger, UNH 1018.
I'm passing 10,000 feet now, which means we can increase our speed to essentially up to our cruising speed. We'll also reduce our rate of ascent. We'll bring it down to 1,800 feet per minute, and at this point now we can let's just acknowledge that climb to 260. And set that in autopilot, so that's... And we're now able to proceed on our own course as well, so we can feed that into the autopilot. So you can see the course is the pink line, and we'll turn to intercept that course now. So, as we were, we can now turn off the seatbelt sign. So by listening to some of the ATC communications, there's a Ryanair flight, Ryanair 1134, that was just talking, has just been handed over to Harden, which is the control area in North Wales. Harden is where Airbus have a wing factory. It has its own private airport where the belugas fly into. A Ryanair flight has just checked in there, so I think that is possibly heading for Dublin. So we may come across that as we head forward. We are currently just about to cross the Wirral. So Harden itself is to our left, and Liverpool Airport will be to our right in the next couple of moments. So around here somewhere is a Ryanair flight, Ryanair 1134, although I can't currently see it at the moment. But we'll keep our eyes out and see if we can locate it. But yeah, as I was saying, all the ATC communications in the simulator are related to actual aircraft that we could encounter. None of it is just fictitious chatter. It's all real aircraft within the simulator, and there are loads. Trying to do a simulated flight out of Heathrow is an absolute nightmare. You can be in a jam with 8 aircraft deep waiting for departure for about 40 minutes. It's quite chaotic. And crossing the channel, when I do Birmingham to Dublin's, those are quite busy as well, because you encounter quite a lot of aircraft going into Dublin, which can be fun and challenging at the same time. So we turn now to track over the Irish Sea. To the aircraft's left, if you see in the wing view, is the North Wales coastline. So we were just cleared to head up to our cruising altitude, 30,000 feet. We'll do that in a gentle climb, 1400 feet per minute, and that should then settle us at our cruising speed of about Mach 0.8. It's worth noting at this point, if you look to the map in the bottom left, you'll see that our track takes us over the southern portion of the Isle of Man. We will fly very, very close to Ronaldsway Airport, EGNS, which is the airport on the Isle of Man. From this view, you can see currently the aircraft, outside the aircraft. We may well see the airfield, assuming there's a break in the cloud to allow us to do so. We're about 5 minutes flying time from the Isle of Man, so we'll check that out when we get there. So we've already been given our initial descent to flight level 200, 20,000 feet. We are, like I say, we haven't reached the Isle of Man yet, but it just goes to show how quick a flight this is. We were cruising there at 30,000 feet for what? About 5 or 6 minutes, and now we're already in our descent to
451, please expedite your descent to flight level 000.
to Belfast. And the Isle of Man is now pretty clear between the clouds below us. We're about to, we're still a bit away from the island yet. We're still 3 minutes from passing over. We may well see Ronaldsway Airport though if there's a gap in the clouds. airfield's just about visible below the aircraft. It's Ronald's Way Airfield on the Isle of Man. Okay, so we have the approach clearance now, and it'll be an ILS runway 25 approach. So we can start banging this information into the flight systems. I've got to turn right to 345.
Please expedite your turn to heading 345. Turn left heading 315. Easy 6756, descend by level 240. Descend and maintain flight level 240, Easy 6756. 451, turn left heading 315, descend altitude 10,000. Turn left heading 315, descend and maintain altitude 10,000. 451.
So we've just been cleared to turn towards Belfast and descend to 10,000 feet. So we'll also start slowing the aircraft at this point as well, down to 250 knots.
Turn left heading 360. Turn left heading 360. EC6756. Turn left heading 285. Turn left heading 285. 451. Turn right heading 315. Turn right heading 315. 451. EC6756. Descend light level 180. Descend light level 180. EC6756. Contact Scottish Control at 119.875.
So we'll enter the ILS information in for runway 25 now. 109.9 is what we're after.
451, please acknowledge. Over 2119.875. 451, thanks, bye-bye. Scottish Control 451, descent 15,700, descending altitude 10,000.
451, Scottish Control, roger, UNH 1015. 451, turn right heading 340.
Turn right heading 340, 451.
And we're going to slow the aircraft a little bit more here, down to 220 knots, because we are actually quite close to intercepting the glide slope, and that's we are still relatively high at this point, so we need to slow the aircraft down pretty dramatically. We'll just put the course in as well, so the ILS looks a bit clearer for us. So it's 250. So as you can see now, the gauge is set for us to intercept the ILS for Belfast International.
Lufthansa Cargo 8189 heavy, turn right heading 145, maintain flight level 290.
Turn right heading 145, climb and maintain flight level 290. Lufthansa Cargo 8189 heavy.
451, you are 20 miles, turn left heading 280, descend and maintain 2,500, cleared ILS, runway 25, approach, maintain 2,500 until established on the localizer. Contact Aldergrove Tower on 118.3.
Turn left heading 280, descend 2,500, cleared ILS, runway 25, approach, maintain 2,500 until established. Tower on 118.3, port 51. Aldergrove Tower, port 51 is 20 miles east inbound ILS. Runway 25, approach. Port 51, Aldergrove Tower, continue runway 25, QNH 1015. Continue runway 25, port 51.
So that's our pattern entry instructions. All that information as it was coming through has been fed into the computer, into the onboard computers. So the plane theoretically now, and fingers crossed, will fly the approach. I'd expect we will make a left-hand turn any moment now to intercept the glide path, and then the glide slope should come active. We've been cleared to descend down to 2,500 feet. We've increased the rate of descent as we come near to the airfield. We are about 13, 14 miles from the airfield, so obviously we are now pretty close, and we do need to slow the aircraft dramatically at this point, so we'll put some speed brakes in to aid with that. So we drop the gear at this point now. The airfield is just about in sight. We are high on the approach at the moment. But we should intercept the glide slope quite a bit before we reach the runway threshold. We're still travelling quite quickly, so we will put some more speed brakes in just to slow us up so we can make sure that we're stable on the approach.
2,500.
So the
451 cleared to land, runway 25.
the flight is now being flown manually,
Cleared to land, runway 25, 451.
so I'm controlling the aircraft now for the final stages of the approach. We are at full flaps, landing gear is down and locked. Just slightly low on the approach now, so we'll pull the nose up just a little bit. And we're drifting slightly to the right of the centre line, so and now we're a little low on the approach, but nothing dramatic at this point. Plane holding quite nicely at 130 knots, but we are flying into heavy rain, and obviously it's a bit on the gusty side, so have to put some rudder in to keep us nice and straight.
500.
Don't sink. 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 Don't sink.
As you can see,
Don't
there's
sink.
quite a bit of
Don't sink.
100 above.
input
Don't sink.
required to keep the
Don't sink.
aircraft on the approach
Don't sink.
and on the centre line.
Don't sink.
There's
Don't
quite a bit
sink.
of rudder input as well as aileron
sink.
input.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
We'll throttle the engines
200.
back at this point as well. What we don't want to do at this point is end up with a wings down
100.
situation, so we'll try and keep the nose in the direction of travel using the rudder
50.
instead of the ailerons at this point.
30. 20.
Rudder
retard.
input.
10.
As landings go, to be fair, that was pretty atrocious. Yeah, it was raining and we were in a headwind, quite a gusty headwind at that, but still, that was all over the place on the runway.
Aldergrove Tower, EC6756 is 8 miles northeast, inbound ILS, runway 25, approach.
I
675
blame at that point
runway 25, QNH 101.
my rudder inputs.
Runway 25, EC6756. Cleared to land, runway 25, follow Airbus A320 on the runway. Cleared to land, runway 25, EC6756, 451, contact ground on 121.75. Engine 2121.75, 451, goodbye. Aldergrove ground, 451, request taxi to stand.
451, taxi to stand 17, use taxiway Charlie Alpha.
Taxiing to stand 17, using taxiway Charlie Alpha, 451.
So we'll bring the flaps back up now as well, since we're definitely on the ground. As you can see, very, very rainy conditions in Belfast. The weather on departure was that it would be nice weather, but clearly that isn't the case. And that of course didn't help our landing. Like I say, just looking back over that landing and critiquing it myself, the error on my part was too much rudder input to try and correct the movement of the aircraft in the air, which led to us being way off the centre line. If I'd have just put, just a little bit of rudder input, that landing would have been fine and very close to the centre line, but because I over-egged it with the rudder input, we ended up drifting way to the right. Obviously we still landed on the runway. Any landing you can walk away from is a good landing, but being critical, no. I wasn't happy with that landing at all, really. It's an A319 approaching the runway there. One would assume that's probably another easy flight. Yeah, it is. It's another EasyJet flight.
Aldergrove round, EC6756, taxi to scan.
EC6756, taxi to scan 24, via taxiway Bravo Alpha.
Taxiing to scan 24 via taxiway Bravo Alpha, EC6756.
And there we are, on the ground and parked. So we will, first things first, shut down the engines. As you can see, wet and windy conditions in Belfast. We have parked somewhat away from the whole point, but nevertheless that should not impede the jetway coming to us. We will soon see. It does. Okay. Let's get that door shut again. So we'll need to move the aircraft forward a little bit. In normal circumstances, if an aeroplane pulls up too short like we did there, and they've turned their engines off like we did there, the tug will be used to drag the plane forward a couple of yards that are needed, but obviously FSX isn't that technical and isn't that in depth, so we'll have to fire the engines back up and allow the plane to just draw forward. And then we'll kill the engines again. There we go. So we'll kill the engines again. and the jetway still doesn't want to come out to the aircraft, so obviously there's nothing we can do about that. So we'll open the door, and baggage. So now we've arrived at Belfast, and we're going to have the thing with the baggage truck where it can't get to where it needs to be, and it's going to scuff itself basically. Whilst all that's going on, what we will do at this point now is load in all the flight details that we require for the return flight back. So flight planning, we need to do it in FSX first. So flight planner, we're at EGAA, and we're going to EGBB. We'll come back on almost exactly the same routing. We can delete that, and we can delete that from there. So we'll come back on a Wallasey routing again. Isle of Man, Wallasey, and then down into Birmingham. We'll come back at 28,000 feet this time, I think. Okay. Let's load that. So Aldergrove to Birmingham. That route is correct. EZY 126. I don't know if that's the real flight number or not, but 126. That's what we'll call it. It's an A320. GEZTD, that's our aircraft. Okie dokie. So the map has updated for you to show our return route now back to Birmingham. So what we'll do now is we'll configure the aircraft for our departure. We will check. We're expecting to use 400 kilograms of fuel, so let's check the fuel on board, and we've got plenty of fuel on board for the flight back, so we don't need to worry about fuel. ILS for Birmingham, both runways run on a 110.10, so we can tune that now, because we know that when we get to Birmingham, it doesn't matter which runway we get assigned, 110.10 works on both, so we can load that in straight away. And so that's into the system and ready for when we make our approach to Birmingham. So we will get our initial clearance.
Aldergrove ground, 451, ready to copy. IFR clearance to Birmingham.
451 is cleared to Birmingham Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain altitude 12,000. Departure frequency is 128.5, squawk 3455.
So 12,000 again for the departure. We're going to climb.
451, cleared to Birmingham Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain altitude 12,000. Departure on 128.5, squawk 3455.
451 correct. Contact ground on 121.75.
So we're going to climb out at 2,300 feet per minute again. And like I say, our routing is back over the Isle of Man, Wallasey, and then approaching into Birmingham. But given that we departed 15, that safe money would be that we're going to make a 15 approach into Birmingham. And if that's the case, then the flight back should be quite a bit quicker than the outbound flight. But we've got our initial clearance, so let's check on the status of loading. Loading done, so we can close those doors. And we'll close the main door. And we will request clearance for taxi, and by extension obviously startup as well.
Aldergrove ground, 451, with information November. Request taxi, IFR.
451 taxi holding point 3 runway 25 using taxiway Alpha. Contact tower 118.3 when ready.
Taxi, hold short runway 25, using taxiway Alpha.
Okay,
451.
so we'll push back and start the engines. Okay, let's start engine number 1. And start engine number 2. Okay, let's have a quick check of the flight surfaces. Elevator. Rudder. Ailerons. All free and easy movement. Let's make sure we're clear around the aircraft, and we are. We wait for the tow to clear off from the front of us. And then we will be set to taxi. This is one of the glitches of FSX in that the tow makes this zigzaggy motion back to the gate, and it just takes an age to get it clear of the aircraft. I mean, if we wanted to, obviously we could just power up and disappear off to the runway now, but in the interest of realism we will wait until it's sufficiently clear of the aircraft before we set off for the runway. And with that, well, I'm happy to go, so release the parking brakes. Don't need much power at all in the A320, and also because we don't have a full fuel complement, we're flying with just enough to get us back to Birmingham, or divert if necessary to East Midlands. The aircraft is very light, so we don't need much in the way of throttle input for taxi power. So we'll set our flaps at this juncture for departure. So flaps are set for departure. We're making our way down to the end of runway 25. So I anticipate about a 45-minute flight from wheels up to wheels down. Slightly quicker than the outbound leg, simply for the fact of the arrival runway in Birmingham. Assuming it's going to be a 1-5 arrival, then we're going to be flying straight in. There'll be no holding around the airfield. There is an aircraft on approach, probably another Easy. It's an A319, so we're going to be held, no doubt, whilst he lands before we get our departure clearance. It's so on the radio he's just said he was 7 miles out and he's been cleared to land. So we'll almost certainly be held. We're not going to be able to do a quick dash out of here before he comes in. He's currently in the clouds, but I would suggest he's probably 5 miles out now, which won't be enough time for us to line up and go.
Alder Grove Tower, 451, ready for IFR departure, runway 25. 451, hold short, runway 25, traffic is Airbus A319, bus final. Hold short, runway 25, 451.
So as I thought, we're going to have to hold short at this point for the arriving A319, and there he is, you can see his lights through the clouds now. Blimey, he stopped quick. That was a really, really quick stop. Yeah, he's still on the runway at the moment. Oh, and he turns off, so we should now be given clearance to line up at least.
Contact ground on 121.75, 451, cleared for takeoff.
Oh no, clear for takeoff.
265 at 12. Cleared for takeoff, runway 25.
12 knot wind. So we we should head off up like a rocket then in that case, because there'll be a lot of lift under the wing from a 12 knot surface wind that almost head on. Almost perfect conditions for a departure. Looks like there's a bit of lightning in these clouds as well, so it could give us some turbulence as we go up through 4,000 to 10,000 feet. Okay, we're set, we're ready. I'm happy with everything set up and ready to go. Let's just ensure that's in play. Yes. Okay, let's go. Engine spool look normal, happy with that. Let's go to full throttle. And V1, rotate, and V2, positive rate, gear up.
Contact Alder Grove departure on 128.5.
And like I said, the plane would go off like a rocket because of that headwind. We've climbed very nicely outwards from the airfield.
Alder Grove departure 451 is at 1,300, climbing altitude 12,000. 451 Alder Grove departure, roger, UNH 1015.
And we can already start to bring in the departure flaps. Ideally at this point we would like to be able to make our turn. It should be a left-hand turn to come back the way we're going, to intercept our track. The sooner we can make that turn, the quicker the flight will be. And we can bring the flaps in fully now. So we're clear to turn to heading of 100, which puts us very close to our track. So we will manually make that turn.
Did you copy? Turn left heading 100, climb altitude 12,000, 451.
So we make our left turn now to 100. So we're coming out above the cloud levels now. We can increase our speed as we're over 10,000 feet to our cruising speed. Mach 0.82 would be nice as we make our way across the Irish Sea. And we should get an increase in altitude as well very shortly.
Runway level 210.
Climb and maintain flight level 210, 451.
So we're cleared to flight level 210 or 21,000 feet. We reduced the rate of climb just a bit so that we can knock off the seatbelt sign. we're still climbing at 2,000 feet a minute. Once we reach 21,000 feet, we'll then get clearance to 28,000 feet, or anticipate we'll get clearance for 28,000 feet, at which case we'll reduce the vertical speed further. We'll probably climb at about 1,200 feet per minute as opposed to the 2,000 feet per minute we're climbing now. That'll also establish us well into the cruise. But as you saw on the outbound flight, we will be at cruising altitude for literally minutes before we're instructed to descend again. At this time, as you can see on the map, we are still over Northern Ireland, having departed to the west. We're now flying on an easterly track, bringing us back over Belfast, and we will very shortly intercept our flight track, make a right-hand turn, which will fly us over the Isle of Man, and then back down through Wallasey, and that will then take us down towards Birmingham for our approach.
Heading 130, proceed on course 451. Climb flight level 280, 451.
And that's our cruise our clearance to climb to our cruising altitude of 28,000 feet, flight level 280. It'd be a gentle ascent from here, 1,400 feet a minute instead of 2,200 feet a minute we were climbing before. On longer distance flights, to say something to Spain or Italy or Greece, the holiday destinations, we would probably climb at about 1,200 feet a minute. just so it's a gentler ascent. But because we expect that we will get our descent clearance in the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes, we'll do our best to get to 28,000 feet, flight level 280, before we get the descent clearance. So below us is the Isle of Man. Again, we can't see the airport, which we are flying directly above Ronaldsway Airport. It's obscured by cloud cover as it was on the way out, but it is directly below us. Might get a glimpse of it if we're lucky. Oh yes, it's to the top of the aircraft. Just see the runway appear in there. That's Ronaldsway Airport. And ahead of us is the North Wales coast. The piece of land jutting out you can see just above the aircraft is Great Orme, Llandudno, which is to the left. You can just make out sort of like the beachy area. That is Llandudno itself there, and on the other side of the Orme obviously the Ganwy. And then as you come along the North Wales coast, there is Prestatyn and Rhyl. It's a closer look there of the Great Orme and Llandudno. Another aircraft passing us by there, an ATR 42. One would assume that's probably Dublin bound. So we're about 2 minutes away from a slight right-hand turn over Wallasey to point us in the direction of Birmingham. I expect we'll rapidly then be making several turns, a few to the left and then one to the right to intercept the ILS, assuming we get a 1-5 approach, that is, into Birmingham. So we've got our initial descent clearance down to 17,000 feet. . 。 we'll, in the next minute, make that slight turn to the right. So the slight right-hand turn is complete, and we are now flying directly towards Birmingham Airport. However, I expect we will get instructions for our approach imminently. Assuming it's a 1-5 approach, we'll be making a left-hand turn to begin our way down to intercept the glide slope. Okay, wasn't expecting that, but we have been assigned runway 33, which means instead of the left turns I was anticipating to intercept the 1-5 ILS, we are now going to have to fly a circuit of the airfield. So fly past the airport to then make 2 left-hand turns to approach from the south. What it does is it adds 10 to 15 minutes onto our flying time. So what we've done is slow our descent obviously, because there's no point getting too low too fast, since we've got probably another 100 miles to fly on top of what we're anticipating. So we've been given a clearance to descend to 3,000 feet. Again, we will do it as a very gentle descent, given the distance we still are yet to fly. So we'll descend at 1,200 feet per minute. And if that turns out to be too quick, we can lessen it as we make our circuit around Birmingham Airfield, which will come into view. We'll take a look at it shortly. We're about 18 miles from the field right now. For those familiar with the area, we are currently overflying Cosford, RAF Cosford, and we will shortly overfly Hackney Green, otherwise known as Wolverhampton Business Airport. Bedford is just behind us there. And there's Halfpenny Green. Or Wolverhampton Business Airport, which is quite some distance actually from Wolverhampton, but it's known in pilots' circles as Halfpenny Green. And Birmingham Airport is off in the distance, in the middle of the view right now. Just about make out the NEC and the airport terminal buildings. And where those buildings are down there, that's Birmingham city centre. So we're about coming level now with Birmingham Airport, so we will now steepen our descent profile. We will likely probably fly as far as Warwick and Leamington Spa to make our turn to come back to final approach. We're also now going to substantially slow the aircraft. Currently we're at 300 knots, ground speed is 355 knots. We're going to slow that to 200 knots indicated airspeed.
Contact Birmingham, approach at 118.05. Over 2118.05, 451, bye-bye.
Oh, we've just been handed over to Birmingham approach.
Birmingham approach 451, receiving 10,700 for altitude 3000. 451, Birmingham approach, roger, QNH 1018. Contact Gloucester approach at 128.55. 2128.55, 451, goodbye. Gloucester approach 451 is at 9,600, descending altitude 3000. 451, Gloucester approach, roger, QNH 1018. Turn left heading 090. Turn left heading 090, 451.
So that's clearance for us now to begin intercepting the glide slope for the 3-3 approach into Birmingham. Return to 090.
Four five one. Contact commentary approach on 119.25. Over 211.25. 451. Bye bye. Commentary approach 451. Descent altitude 7,000. Descending altitude 3,000. 451. Commentary approach. Roger. UNH 1018.
Okay, we just hit a bit of turbulence there. It wasn't too dramatic, but a defined wobble of the aircraft.
Turn left heading 060. 451.
Okay, and now we'll prepare for intercepting the ILS.
Four five one. You are 19 miles south. Turn left heading 360. Descend and maintain altitude 2,000. Clear ILS. Runway 33. Approach. Maintain altitude 2,000 until established on the localizer. Contact Birmingham Tower on 118.3. Turn left heading 360. Descend and maintain altitude 2,000. Clear ILS. Runway 33. Approach. Maintain altitude 2,000 until established. Tower on 118.3. 451.
So we've just had our clearance to make our approach. So we'll contact the tower and begin our turn onto the approach.
Birmingham Tower 451 is 18 miles south inbound ILS. Runway 33 approach. 451 Birmingham Tower. Continued approach. Runway 33 UNH 1017. Continued runway 33 451.
So the first stages of flaps are in. We're into flap position 2. And we're reducing speed to 160 knots. We will reduce that to 140 knots prior
2,500.
to touchdown. We've got another left turn to make to intercept the ILS track. The glide slope hasn't come active yet. We're currently at 2,300 feet So we're a bit low on the glide for this distance, but no major problem. Coventry Airport is to the right. So we'll put the next stage of flaps in now, reduce speed to 150 knots as we turn to intercept the ILS. And gear down. Gear down and locked as indicated. We can now slow the aircraft to the landing speed and full flaps.
451, clear to land. Runway 33.
And we're clear to land as well at this
runway
point.
33. 451.
As you may have noticed, the glide slope didn't activate, so we're hand flying some of the maneuvers on this approach. Notably, altitude is being controlled by me. The aircraft is holding speed and holding us on the centre line of the ILS, but without the glide slope I am flying the approach using the visual approach slope indicators, which you can see to the left of the runway. It gives us 2 whites and 2 reds if we are correct on the glide slope. It's now gone to 3 reds, which means we're a little bit too low. So just bring the nose up just a touch. As long as it's not 4 reds, 4 reds means we're way too low on the approach. 3 reds is fine.
Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink.
Not concerned about the don't sink
Don't
warning
sink.
because we are landing, of course.
Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink.
100 above.
Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink. Don't sink.
Minimum 200.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
And we'll disengage the auto
Don't
throttle.
sink.
And bring the power
100.
off.
50. 30. 20. Retard.
And reverse thrust set. Speed reducing down to 40 knots. Take reverse thrust out. We've got a little way to go before the next turn off, which is to our right, which we're approaching now, so we'll brake a little bit more. Want to get down to about 20 knots before we reach the turn off. And as you can see, the taxiway nearing on the right hand side now. So we'll make our turn here and vacate the runway.
Contact ground on 121 decimal 8. 121 decimal 8. 451. Birmingham ground 451. Taxi to stand. 451. Taxi to stand 74. Using taxiway Bravo Alpha Delta Victor. Taxiing to stand 74. Using taxiway Bravo Alpha Delta Victor. 451.
So whilst we were getting our stand, we've retracted the flaps, brought in the speed brake. As you can see, the wing is returning to normal level. So flaps in, speed brakes retracted as well, and now we taxi to stand 74. And there we are at gate 74 parked. So let's cut the engines. And open the doors. Hold. And let's take a look at the parking. Oh, very close to the stop line there, very close. Pretty much bang on the line as well, and the aircraft just a little bit skewed, not bang straight, but very good nonetheless by my reckoning. Shame I just didn't draw it forward that little bit more, couple of inches to get it bang on the stop mark, but the Aer Lingus A320 to the side of us didn't make it either, and he's wide of the line. We're not, we're on it, so I'll take that. Okay folks, thanks for joining me for that flight there from Birmingham to Belfast and back again in an EasyJet A320. I'll be back again soon with some more flying from Birmingham. Until then, thanks for joining us. See you next time.